All right. We are on 13, B1, or Yud Gimel Amud Bet. And the Gemara, the Mishnah is as follows. Mechapin et ha-kitziot bakash. When a person puts out the kitziot, what's the kitziot? The figs. When they would put out the figs, what would they do? The figs would be out in order for them to be able to dry out. Because they wanted the figs to dry out, that's how they would dry them. Mechapin et ha-kitziot bakash. You're able to cover them with straw. What's the reason why you're doing that? You want to protect them. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af me'abin. You're even able, from the word av, right? Be'av he'anan. We say av means ovi, it's thick. Af me'avin. You're even able to make the layering of the straw thick. Mochre perot, kesut v'kelim, someone who sells fruit or clothing or vessels or pots, pans. Mochrim b'tzin'ah l'tzorach hamoed. They're able to sell quietly, privately, for the needs of the Moed, if people need them for the holiday. Hatzayadin, v'adashoshot, v'hagerosot, osim b'tzin'ah l'tzorach hamoed. So let's say you have someone who is tzad, he's a trapper, okay, a hunter, right? Mm-hmm. Or, from the word dash, someone who they smash the wheat, the barley, okay? V'hagerosot, from the word grusin, which means beans. Okay, so you'd have someone who takes the beans and smushes the beans. So these people that provided these services, osim b'tzin'ah, same thing, they're able to do the work quietly. B'tzorech hamoed, only if they need it for the holiday. Yossi says, Hem hechmiru al atzmam. These, the people, the last group that we just mentioned, they were machmir on themselves. When you say they're machmir on themselves, usually what that means is they didn't have to do so, but they did so anyway. So they were going like above and beyond what that means. Now,
what's a trapper?
Someone who traps animals.
Hunting.
So some hunters are hunting with a bow and arrow. Some people are hunting by laying traps, or like a bear trap, or with the pit or whatever, or trap for a rabbit. Okay. Says the Gemara. So we don't actually know yet what Rabbi Yossi is saying about these workers when he says that they were machmir on themselves. What does he mean to say? Does he mean to say that really you're allowed to? Just they were going extra? What does he mean to say? So we'll see in the Gemara. Gemara says as follows.
Why do they differentiate between the first group and the second group?
Between the first group of workers.
Food vendors,
So if I turn the question around on you, what would you say? No. Before you say anything,
Special halacha for those people.
just a little. Why? No, because the halacha is the same. In both cases, we said the guy was selling the shirts and the pots and all those things. He's allowed to sell quietly.
So these
Fruits.
people might need the stuff for the whole.
If the holiday. Second thing is the trapper, the grinder, the thresher, whatever. All those guys, they're allowed to do quietly for the holiday. Why would you have a separate category if the halacha is the same? Just before you see anything.
the work that they do.
What's the first guy?
The one guy is selling,
And therefore?
and therefore it's monetary gain.
Okay, but the second time also.
Is it?
Yeah, whatever.
Bean counters and bean grinders. they're
Yeah, I'm
making
being
money?
paid for a service and we're both making money.
Because you would use the stuff from them.
What's the difference between those two
Because you would use the
groups?
stuff from them because they need the money. You don't. You could.
In both
they could
cases-
do it because they need to do it.
It doesn't tell me that they're poor.
Differences.
Doesn't tell me, and also doesn't tell me tzorech moed. All I know is tzorech moed. So everything is the same. It seems like the jobs are different. So Stanley, you started by saying the right word. Selling. The first guy is not doing anything.
He's just selling.
The only thing he's doing is selling the object that belongs to him. He's just selling. Then it tells you about a guy who's doing actual work. He's a trapper. He's a grinder, right? So what he's doing is he's getting paid for work. So I might have thought that those two things are not the same. And therefore the Mishnah may be telling you a chidush. So again, before we even get to the Gemara, the first thing your brain should say is, what's the difference between these two types of things? And the answer is, in one case, there's no action. It's just a selling of an object that it's in my domain. Okay, says Gemara. Pligi ba, so we have a machloket, okay? So far, how do we start? We start off by saying a machloket between the Tana Kama. Who's the Tana Kama? The first opinion, Tanakama, the one that was stated first, and the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. What's the machloket? Seems like the machloket is, how thick of a layer of straw am I allowed to place on the figs? Right? That's what's here. Pligi bar Rav Chia bar Abba v'Rabbi Asi. Rav Chia bar Abba and Rav Asi had a machloket about this machloket. V'tarvayu mishmei dechizkiah Rabbi Yochanan. Both of these, Rav Chia bar Abba and Rav Asi, also were saying their opinion in the name of Rav Chia bar Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan.
What is that? The word
Tarvayu, both of them, like tray. Okay? Chad Amar Michapin Aklushi. One of them said, when we said that a person's able to cover with hay, Aklushi means like kalush, very weakly. In other words, what would that mean?
Sparse.
Yeah, you're putting a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. Me'abin, when it talks about making it ovi, asmuchi, that means that you're making the things, the objects, the actual stalks of straw right next to each other.
so it's thick.
That's one opinion. One opinion says, what's the machloket? The machloket is sparsely or closely.
And do we have that concept? Asmachta?
Look, here, this is, samach is close together, or leaning on. So this is smuchi, this is klushi. Yeah, simple. Yeah. So how thick is the cover, is the straw cover allowed to be? That's the first opinion.
The other guy in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, it was thick meaning layers.
So we just translated it thick.
Okay.
Now, so the Gemaras bring us a machloket into how to translate it. When we said the first opinion, ben aklushi, ben asmuchi, it means thick, close or not close. It means that you're able to pile you're able to make them into a pile. So what does that mean? What are you thickening in that place? It means that you're making the figs, you're gathering the figs together so that when you cover them, it's easier to cover. Now, this new opinion just changed the whole game. The first opinion said, what's the machloket between these two opinions, is whether or not you're allowed to put more or less. The second opinion says no. Mechapin means however you want to cover it. He held, however you want to cover it, you're allowed to cover it. A lot, a little. What does the second opinion says? Me'abin, you make the figs thick.
Oh, different.
By gathering the
Well, you got
figs.
figs, not about the cover.
You're gathering the figs. Right. What does that mean that Rabbi Yehuda is now saying? If I have the figs all laid out, covering it is a lot of work.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because
it's
it's all
long,
gross.
right.
If I gather them all together here like
pile,
this,
yeah, just
yeah,
little things
how hard is it to cover this?
Right.
So if we're worried always on Chol Moed on how much work you're doing,
That's the easy way.
Rabbi Yehuda is telling you, no, you got to bring the figs together so that the act of covering is less.
Isn't the tircha bringing the figs together the active work?
Yes, but still.
It's already laid out to dry. Now I got to buy them.
Right.
So this is one of those things where, right? Either way.
No,
Yeah.
is it gathering the figs less work than covering the
No,
figs?
gathering them to cover them. The
Yeah,
covering
but what I'm
process is
saying
easier.
is,
That's his question.
yeah,
Rabbi Yehuda is saying, yes, that's what you have to do.
The covering process.
Okay?
Because they're already
If you
out.
if you do this, if you gather the figs together, it will be easier to cover them.
so just so I understand it in practice, you have like figs laid out on the floor.
Yeah.
Like they fall from the tree.
Either they fell or you put them there.
Okay, so they're all like laid out, all spread out.
Spread out.
And now you have just straw laying on top. You're putting
Straw, I want to cover them so they don't get ruined.
In the rain.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So Rabbi Yehuda is saying that you first have to gather all of them into an area and then to cover them. That's the better way to do it.
The first opinion says that the machloket is between the opinions, right? Tanakh Rabbi Yehuda. The first opinion says they were arguing how much straw you're putting. Straw like this, or straw even like this. Rabbi Yehuda was letting you put more straw. Okay. The second opinion says no, it's not machloket at all. The first opinion says you're allowed to cover them. He doesn't care how you cover them. How much straw? You could put a ton of straw if you
I
want.
was just gonna say, what's the issue that could be with covering them together?
Why would the Tanakh Amma say you shouldn't?
Yeah.
Tanakh Amma says you don't have to. What Rabbi Yehuda in the second opinion is less strict. Excuse me, is more strict, not less strict. In the first iteration, Rabbi Yehuda was allowing you to put more straw. The second way we're looking at it, the second opinion said, no, that was not the machloket. The machloket is, Tana Kama says cover it however you like. Rabbi Yehuda says you got to gather the figs before you cover them, because that's going to be less work to cover the figs. Okay? Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says Kimin Kiri, you see? It's about 10 lines into the wide lines. Right here, look over here. See, Kimin Kiri. Kimin Kiri, Michansin otam biyachad, kidei shiyu nochin lechasot. You gather them together, so it'll be easier to cover them already. Now, you asked a good question. The question is, who said that gathering the figs is going to be less work than covering it with more straw? Right, that was your question. So either the answer is that just is how it is. It's less work to do so, because you need to cover now more things, and the work of bringing the straw is harder work, okay? Or the answer is going to be that because the figs are already out there, right? Because they're already out there, so gathering them together is less of a melacha. Okay. So therefore, all you're doing is pulling them together.
Do we assume do we generalize and say they're using fig? Is we saying fruit indirectly?
So what do you mean? I don't understand the question. Same thing. Yeah.
So that's the mashal, but it applies to all fruit.
Anything you're going to dry, yeah.
Because usually sometimes specific to that.
So unless the Gemara will find a way that's not the same thing.
Item.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to get an idea.
This is the first time Moed Kattan is talking about being efficient with your work, and if you could do less of that work, do less. No, we did not find that.
Give me a solar microscope.
That is an opinion that you're supposed to gather the figs close.
We did not find this, but we found other examples like that. So
we have it, right.
yeah. So as an example, we saw that there was one opinion that said that once you're doing the work already, so then you should have to do it like this. The other opinion says no, you don't have to. Once you start the work, then do the work as much as you want. Okay. So in that last machloket that we had already, we talked about this idea of being more efficient. Once we told you yes, we're still going to make you be more efficient. Okay, so that's the simple understanding we've got so far in terms of the machloket. Now, by the way, there are other ways to look at this machloket of Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan to see this opinion, this opinion of Yehuda, not as a more strict opinion, but also as a more lenient opinion. But I just followed the simple understanding. So in other words, the Tanakh Kama says cover them however you like, even though they're all over the place. Rabbi Yehuda says no. What is af me'avin? Right now, why would you not say it the way I just said it to you? This is why I wanted to introduce the other opinion. Rashi said that Rabbi Yehuda is telling you can't cover it unless you pile it up. Why? Because then you had more work for yourself. But the problem is that the word in the Mishnah is af me'abin.
You may even.
Yeah, even. What's even? It's not even, it's only. You see?
Right.
So the word af, right. So af must mean that you're even able to do this. In other words, I agree with the guy before, but you're even able to do this. According to that, so what are we trying to say? It would turn out then that the Tanakh Kama would hold that you're not able to be me'avin. Like we'll allow you to do.
Yeah, and it's also specific. The qualifier is specifically on covering.
Qualifier.
We may even cover.
No. Because in the first interpretation, me'avin is relevant to covering. In the second interpretation,
sparse versus thick.
Yeah, me'avin is talking about the figs, not the straw. Right? Okay. So let's continue. So that's why the other Rishonim held that maybe the way you read this is that Rabbi Yehuda held that not only are you allowed to cover it, but if you would like to do this me'avin, and one of the reasons why I would think that it's a bigger chidush is maybe there's a chidush that in the work of Rabbi Yehuda is saying if I want to do it like this, I'm allowed to. Why? Because now I'm doing two separate kinds of melacha. Gathering and covering. So maybe what I would have allowed you to do is one. Rabbi Yehuda says no, you're even allowed to do a little bit of this melacha, the gathering, and a little bit of this melacha, the covering. Mix and match, fadal, pick and mix. Okay.
But we learned that with Shabbat, right? Because you could move furniture, right? Which is much more difficult.
Yeah.
Right? But you can't do a melacha. That's something that's, it's not always about the physical work, right?
Yeah.
It's about how it ties to the actual melacha. That's Isur.
Correct. But if we're saying the chidush over here is that it's 2 melachot versus 1, I'm not sure that that's that case. Like when we allowed you to do 1 melacha, does that mean we didn't allow you to do 2 melachot? Like if I'm allowed to do a melacha because it's pikuach nefesh, does anyone say that I have to do the melacha that I'm doing only one of them and not 2 of them? No. We just say pikuach nefesh doche. Right. So once we're telling you that you're allowed to do it because you need it for the holiday,
There's no difference.
right? Maybe there would be no difference, but the Tanakh Hama clearly says that there is. Okay, so we'd have to look into that understanding. Okay, let's continue. Tanya Namiachi. Again, there's a lot of different opinions in this, but I don't feel we need to get further into it than this. Tanya Namiachi. We learned exactly like this in the Braita. Me'abin ose oto kimen kiri. When you thicken it, what does that mean? It means that you make it like a pile. And what's it talking about now? It's obviously talking about the figs. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So we had 2 different ways of understanding the machloket Tanakh Amar Rabbi Yehuda. The second way said me'abin means making the figs into a pile. And the Gemara says, actually, we have a Braita that seems to say that that's exactly what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. So it seems like we've got a Braita that proves that second approach is correct. The halacha is that they're able to sell in private if the people need it, as we said. Then we continued and we said as well that these people who are doing the work with regards to hunters or the grinders or the 2 different kinds of smashers, whether they're smashing beans or they're smashing grain, right? Able to do the work, but it has to be b'tzin'ah, where people can't see, if people need it for themselves. Then Rabbi Yossi said, remember, hechmiru al atzman. Remember, the Mishnah said these guys they were machmir. What does that mean? Hechmiru al atzman. Ibailu. Hen hechmiru al atzman. Delo have avdi kelal. Does this mean that they were strict on themselves, so they did not do the work that they were allowed to do? Or dilma havu avdu b'tzina. Or is Rabbi Yossi saying, really, they were allowed to do it in public?
Saying,
It shows
But
the
this
way
that they
all
did it in
conditions
private
are
is a chumrah. What does it mean? This is exactly the example we gave of the hanging modifier. You have a statement. You're allowed to do this in private if you need it for the moed. Says Rabbi Yossi, they took that as a stringency on themselves. Does that mean that they would not do the work even in private, or does it mean that the doing of it in private itself was a stringency? Gemara says, Tashima, let's bring a ra'aya to this. They're able to do it and sell for the needs of the moed. Rabbi Yossi says, Tegare Tiveria, the merchants of Tiveria, the sellers of Tiveria, they took on themselves that they would not sell at all. Okay? The hunters of wild animals and birds and fish, tzadim b'sinah, they're able to hunt quietly, privately, tzorach hamoed, for the needs of the Chol Hamoed. Rabbi Yossi says, tzadei Akko, when it comes to the hunters of Akko, the city of Akko, they took on themselves a stringency, that they would not do it at all. Now, let's just be clear. Yeah?
This goes back to the idea, this a little bit related, that when you used to mention something of that town. Remember we talked about sometimes like that town has a style.
Shelanya.
The
You
rabbi.
remember?
I said by Shelanya. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that town,
We had it as well,
they
and
did
with
this.
Rava and Mechoza.
Yes. So
Yeah.
here, the distinguishing, this town you could do that, and that town.
You mean the hunters of this town?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna get there. Just 1 second. Excellent. Says the Mishnah. Says the Braita. Dashoshe, the people that would smash the items. Chilka targis v'tisane. The people who would take these various objects, these various fruits. grains. Rashi says dashushe tevuah, the people that did the tevuah, the grain. Iked amid dashushe
What's Chilka, Targis, and Tisane? What is
Some
that?
kind of food.
Each one is a different kind. Yeah. Okay, so we have Chilka, Targis, and Tisane, it looks like there's another nusach in Rashi. Rashi brings another nusach on what they were smashing. Hold on one second. Look down here at the bottom.
Type of grits.
Magic one.
Are these the real grits?
Magic.
Magic.
Are we gonna learn that Tiberia was like a wealthy town and the other town was wealthy? That's what they didn't need to work.
Here, Rashi says, you see Chilka? It's the last narrow line of the Rashi on the bottom.
Yeah.
The Shushe Chilka, Doshishin et Chilka vet Targis kulan chitinem. They're all different kinds of wheat. Ela Chilka chad letre. Chilka means breaking it from 1 into 2. Shedash et hativua v'chotitin ad shemitkalachat l'shnayim. Ad shemitchaleket l'shnayim. So Chilka is chitin, is wheat, but it's the process of smashing it from 1 into 2, break it in half. Okay? So each one of these, according to the Rashi Ktav Yad, was the same kind of wheat, but it was a different process of smashing it. Okay? So they would do this, Chilka, Targis, and Tzaneh. They were able to do it, but they were doing it privately, but for the Tzorach Moed, if people need it for the holiday. Rabbi Yossi Omer, the Shoshet Tzipore, the people who were from Tzipore, the smashers from Tzipore, they would not smash at all on Chol Moed. So we have 3 different locations. We have the sellers of Tiberia, we have the hunters of Akko, and we have the smashers of Tzipori. Okay? So clearly, you see that Rabbi Yossi was saying, he was saying that they restricted themselves. And what does it mean? It doesn't mean that they were strict to do it privately, as opposed to do it publicly. It means that they were strict not to do it at all. And we brought a proof from Tiberia, from the Breita. So different places, yeah. Like Tiberia is in the south. It's by the Galilee. Yeah, all in Israel. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that the Gemara seems to bring from the Breita that Rabbi Yossi is obviously saying that Hechmir al Atzman means they didn't do it at all. And where we're bringing the proof from? Because you see, he says they restricted themselves and they didn't do it at all. If I was writing Gemara, I actually would have said, 1 second, it doesn't say that the trappers and the sellers and the smashers, it doesn't say that they wouldn't do it at all. What does it actually say?
They do it
In
in private.
private.
No, he says that they wouldn't do it at all.
They raised the chashuv.
Yeah, he says, remember, Rabbi Yossi says they took it on themselves. They would not pound it all. They would not trap it all. They would not sell it all.
Right.
So is that a proof that to the answer the Gemara's question? Why not?
We allowed them to do the work. Either we said you could do the work in public and even in private.
Maybe they're a chashuv person.
Right.
Yeah,
Wait, one minute.
First time around, you said maybe they were even allowed.
Let's
to
go
do
back.
it, but they didn't.
There's a machloket. How do we see Rabbi Yehuda? Or Rabbi Yossi? He says they were strict on themselves. What does that mean? Does it mean that they didn't do it at all? Or does it mean that the fact that they did it b'tzinah was that was being strict?
Correct.
They really were able to do it in public, but they did it b'tzinah. We brought a proof from the Breita. You see here, he says that they wouldn't do it at all. So that proves that Rabbi Yossi is saying that the trappers, the sellers, the smashers, they would not do it at all. Is that a good proof?
No.
You guys are forgetting your own diuk.
Because we said they were allowed to use it in public. The
Sorry?
trappers. We said the trappers were allowed to do it in public.
No, we didn't. The Breita says that they have to do it in private. The Mishnah, sorry. Rabbi Yossi says on the Mishnah, what does he say? That they were being strict on themselves. Right? That's what he says. The Gemara says, what does it mean that they're being strict? Does it mean not at all, or does it mean in private? The Breita then comes along and says, Rabbi Yossi, he says clearly, the trappers of this place, they were strict on themselves.
Different rules in different places.
There we go. Where do you know that Rabbi Yossi? Because in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi doesn't say the trappers of this place or this place or this place. He just says all of them. If anything, the Braita would seem to tell me that a regular trapper from wherever was not strict.
These are isolated.
Right? One more time. If you read the Braita says, the trappers of Tzipori, okay, of Akko, the pounders of Tzipori, the sellers of Tiveria, they were strict not to sell anything. What does that tell you about the other sellers and the other trappers and the other smashers? No, these guys are the strictest. But everybody else in each town, one of this respectively was strict to the point where they didn't do anything, even privately. What does that tell you about all the other sellers, all the other trappers, that they were doing it? So maybe Rabbi Yossi in our Mishnah is saying Hechmiru al Atzman means that they were strict to do it in private. And Rabbi Yossi in the Braita is telling you the next level up. That there were these people over here and over here and over here, didn't do it at all. Yeah. So what's the Gemara's proof? Right? That should bother all of us. Okay? All right, but let's leave for now. I have my own answer. I want to see if anyone else has an answer for this. I have my own answer. But if anyone else has an answer, I'd love to hear yours. Okay? Let's continue. Amar Abaye Chilka Chada Letarte. What does Chilka mean? 1 to 2. Chilek, divided in half. Targis Chada Letlat. The smashers of wheat for Targis were smashing it into 3. Tisane Chada Le'arba. The smashers of Tisane were splitting the grain not into 1 piece or 2, not into 2 pieces or 3 pieces, but into 4 pieces. But in all the cases, it was a matter of smashing, a matter of pounding the wheat. Kiyata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came along, now there's many cases in Shas where you find this expression. Kiyata Rav Dimi, what does that mean? Rav Dimi lived in Israel. And he came to Bavel. So when he came to Bavel, there were things that he was challenging because he came from a whole different school of thought. So all the time you'll see this language. Ki ata Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, right, from Bavel, from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said what? No, kutna. Chilka doesn't mean splitting wheat into 2 verses 3 or 4. Chilka actually means kunta. It means a different kind of grain. The grain is called spelt. Okay? Gemara says, Metve, you're telling me that that's what the Braita means when it says chilka. It means spelt. Metve, chilka, targis, v'tisane, tameim b'chol makom. These 3 things are tameh b'chol makom. In any location. Whether it's in the city or in the village. Now, let's just see for 1 second. Why is that something which is important? Rashi says, what?
Sipori. Because we said that the people who pounded there in Sipori didn't do anything. So now it's saying that you're finding it is it specifying the locations?
No, now we're talking about Tum'ah. Whole different item now. Okay? Says Rashi. You see Rashi right there in the middle? Right in the middle of the page. Tameim b'chol makom. They're tameh everywhere. What is tameh everywhere? What is that? Why would you have thought otherwise? Mekablin tum'ah ben makifarim ben makirachim. They become tum'ah whether they're in the kfar in the village or if they're in a city. The kaimalan, because we hold so that shel bnei kirachim mekabelet tum'ah. The wheat of the people who were bnei kirachim, the cities, it accepts tum'ah. Shehuchshira b'mayim, because it was already exposed to water. Ubnei Chefarim en makpidin asolet nikiyah. The people of the kefar, they were not strict on having solet, having flour that was very clean and pure. Lilatot b'mayim v'solet shelahen. Their solet tahor shelo uchshar me'olam. It was never exposed to water ever before. Okay? So the people of the Kirachim, they are, what's it called? Their stuff is Huchshira B'mayim. The Bnei Kefarim are not Makbidim. Okay? So we have two different places where the reality in each of these places is different with regards to the Tum'ah. Why? Because in one place, it was exposed to water, and in one place, it wasn't exposed to water. Generally, there's a law with regards to Tum'ah that only something which has already come into contact with a liquid can become Tameh. Okay? So, says the Gemara, Machshiri means it's like ready for. Okay? The EF Shalem, sorry, let's finish the Rashi. So, says Rashi, Aval Chilka, but Chilka, that's with Solet. Chilka Teme'im B'chol Makom. Chilka is Tameh everywhere. Afilu B'Kefarim, even in that location. The EF Shalem B'lo Litita, because it's impossible without having it in the water. Mishum Hachi Teme'in, D'Hamit Kesher, D'Sharilu B'Maya. The only way is that if it would have been in water. That's the process that they would undergo. Okay? Le'olam Havi Kunta. Mikalfin D'Sharilu B'Maya D'Shari Klipa. Says the Gemara. So asks the Gemara on Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi explained that chilka is spelt and not the way you split wheat into two. If you say that it means dividing the wheat into 1, into 2, into 3, into 4, that's how the first opinion said. That's why they're tameh everywhere, because in the process of splitting these the kernels into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, they would put them in water, and then they're huchshar l'tumah. So that's why chilka, targis, and tisane are all able to be mekabel tumah wherever they go. The itkashur, because they are exposed to water. If you're talking about kunta, so it's spelt. Why would they be tameh in every place? It should not become tameh, right?
It's not so.
Exactly, because it's not split.
It's whole.
It's whole. The only reason why chilka was split wheat is because chelik, it means you split it into 2.
Once you open it up.
If you're translating the word chilka as spelt, i.e. not split but whole,
Then it doesn't apply.
then it was never wet. In which case, there should be a difference between, it should not be tameh b'chol makom, ha'eloit keshur. So therefore, chilka, they can't mean spelt. Gemara says, no, kegon de mikalfin. We're talking about the chilka after it was already peeled, right? After the outside husk was separated, all right? Now, when you separate, when you take out the outside peel, when the husk is removed, right? Then it's ready to become tameh. Because the only way you could take off the husk from the spelt is by putting it in water. So it's true that the spelt is not ground or split, but if it's peeled, it must have been in water. So what we're talking about is peeled spelt, which therefore is always tameh. Good? Everybody clear? So we already know why chilka is called chilka if it's wheat, because you're splitting it into 2, chelik. Okay? Why is it called chilka, says the Gemara? If you're not saying that it means split in half, you're telling me that it means peeled and it means spelt, why would you call a peeled spelt chilka? The Gemara says, Tishakil chilakayu, because when you take off the outside, now it's chalak. It's smooth. Now, by the way, you ever hear the word when it comes to meat? Basar, meat, it's chalak. Glat. What's glat? What's chalak? Chalak means smooth. Glat means smooth. What's smooth? The lungs. When you're asking for meat that's glat, what do you want to check? That the lungs have been checked to see if they're smooth or if they have bumps. If the lung has bumps in it, it means cow has bumpy lungs. It's not glat kosher because it's not as healthy. So we're more worried that it might have a defect. Okay, not default, defect. So what did they do? They would feel the lungs to see if the lungs were chalak, smooth, or glat. Therefore, the Gemara is saying, what is chilka? Chilka means smooth, not split, because that's also chelek, right? It's not chelek, it's chalak. So that's where the word chilka came from, according to Rav Dimi. 6:30. Shoot, we're so close. We'll leave it. No, we're going to want to miss mincha.
No, we're going to start at the
We're going to pick up from here
13B3
with
at the
13b3. Yeah,
bottom. The Gemara agrees. Like,
yeah, mitzvah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, was that a little slower?
Perfect.
Okay.